Because the thing that's happening and how this relates to your work and co-living is that, you have 59, 69,000, whatever the number is going to be this year, people living on the streets. And people will tell you that there are 69,000 reasons why they're on the streets. And I agree with that. Every individual has a different reason for getting off the tracks. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they lack the support to deal with the trauma that made them homeless in the first place. Because if you were on the streets, maybe your mom and dad would help you, or your friends would, or somebody. But these people don't have that support for whatever reason. So what Haaven provides to them is the support to work through the trauma that made them homeless in the first place. And that support comes through their peers. It comes through people who they're living with, who are helping them get their lives back on track.
Christine here with another fun episode of the Co-Living Code Show. Airs every Wednesday. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, ISL Furnishings. They're a brand created through Inner Space Living, and they're all about creating exciting spaces where design meets function. They've actually done quarters in Star City. So they've definitely done some big communities, some awesome stuff. You could see the pictures on their website. Inner Space parlayed its success in commercial grade unit furniture and conceived an elevated offering. And they strongly believe in the co-living industry, which is cool. And they were founded with the mission to bring your brand to life. Their goal is to revolutionize the unit furniture experience. And driven by creativity, ISL Furnishings believe that interiors should inspire brilliance. Every venue has its own voice. They exist to clarify that voice, interpret your brand vision, and deliver quality on time, every time. And like I said, yes, they've done Star City and quarters, but they've also done smaller communities. They can do 10 beds and up. And you can definitely check them out at islfurnishings.com. So let's go ahead and launch into today's episode. So you guys, we have never done this before. We are actually re-airing an episode from last year, from last Christmas. This is Co-Living for the Homeless in Los Angeles. It's super cool. Heidi Roberts is amazing. I'll go ahead and read her bio first. She's the co-founder of Haaven Collaborative Housing, an incredible concept that provides housing to the homeless. Fondly termed a rebel with a cause, Heidi has been working hard to provide shelter and support to members of our population most in need. Haaven has an incredible success rate and is expanding to more locations. And her background in marketing and business has helped her create an ever-growing movement that changes lives every day. I know you'll be inspired. It would be amazing to see other cities in the U.S. do the same thing. Lastly, we did open up partnership opportunities for 2021 in the Co-Living show and podcast. So if you want to reach more people, whether that's the operators, the investors, real estate developers, all the different types of people that are interested in co-living, then you can reach out to our team. We can give you more information. And so with that, let's launch right into this week's episode and have a wonderful holiday season. Hello, everybody. Christine here with this week's guest of the Co-Living Code Show, Heidi Roberts with Haaven in Los Angeles, not to be confused with Haaven Co-Living in Venice Beach that we just had on the show a couple weeks ago. And I know this episode is going to air on Christmas Day, which just by chance I realized, and I'm actually really excited about it because Heidi is doing something really cool. She is providing co-living for the homeless in Los Angeles. And as most of you guys know, there are 59,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County. It's devastating, and so thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I know we're gonna have a great conversation. Heidi's amazing. I met you, it was probably in August, and I've been begging you to come on since. So welcome to the Co-Living Code.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so I want to hear your journey for sure. And I will confess something. I will share a quick story. What reminded me to reach out to you again recently was I was driving to Los Angeles from San Diego, and my GPS, it was 7 a.m. I had to be there for a meeting, and my GPS routed me through Skid Row, through the heart of Skid Row on a Thursday morning. It devastated me. I had not driven through there in maybe 15 years. And never at 7 a.m. And it broke my heart. And then part of me said, no, I think the GPS rerouted me on purpose through here, not just to save traffic, but for a different reason. So thank you so much. So yeah, let's start on your journey and what made you, tackle such a massive problem.
Well, started with probably about 10 years ago. I live in Venice with my family, with my husband and John and my son Andreas. And we've lived here for maybe 18 years or so. And year after year, we kept on seeing the same people living on the streets. And, Venice is known for its tolerance and having sort of a funky community. But it started about 7 years ago, getting crazy, where there were so many homeless people. And it wasn't just sort of, a homeless person that had some sense of health and was maybe living off the grid. It was people who had serious mental health issues and serious addiction issues. And it was tragic because we were watching them literally rot on the streets. So year after year, seeing the same people on our street corner, at the end of our alley, in our parks, it just got us thinking. And I'll be honest with you, at first we were sort of annoyed by it. Raising a family here, it was like, why is this happening? So, tried to start digging into it and figure out, why are there so many people? So I started researching, and I have an advertising background. So I used to be a strategic planner. So it comes very naturally to me to be able to figure out how to sort of look at a problem and figure out a solution. And so I started volunteering with local organizations and trying to dig into them. And I started realizing that there's a ton of money that comes into the social services system, if you will. But it's absolutely named social services because it's really, it's created to service the homeless population, to service people living on the streets. So it was millions and millions and millions of dollars going into service this population, but it just seemed to be getting worse and worse, and it was proliferating more and more. So I thought, well, geez, if I could just get in there, work with the system, and figure out how to shift their objective from serving homelessness and helping to sustain it to ending homelessness. Because if you end homelessness and that's your objective, you do different things. And guess what the solution to ending homelessness is? It's housing. And this seemed like a no-brainer to us. So we started shopping this idea, if you will, going to meetings and civic meetings. And, I continued to volunteer with different service organizations around the city to learn best practices. So we were consistently shopping this idea of shared living. And, if you could get people living in sort of a roommate situation, it would cut the costs, it would speed implementation, etc. Plus, my husband and I had a background with some real estate investment, no big deal. Fourplexes, a couple of fourplexes, we'd go in and paint between tenants and stuff. So we knew how to manage small properties. And so after spending years trying to convince people that there was a real opportunity here to quickly and efficiently set up housing for shared living communities of formerly homeless people, nobody was biting. So about 2 years ago, my husband said, let's just do it. And so the three of us, John, Andreas, and I, we sold a building and we bought a new building. It was downtown in Los Angeles. It's a 4-unit building, newly constructed, brand new, really good bedroom to bathroom ratio. And we got all of our friends and family to donate furniture, and we bought big screen TVs and outfitted these houses so they're like Airbnb. So they're really beautiful homes, but they had 2 beds to each bedroom, so they could support a lot of residents. So on April, I think it was the 15th of 2018, believe it or not, 28 formerly homeless people moved in to this 4-unit property. It's called Weller House, and it was an exhilarating day, but we couldn't believe it. There are all these people living here, and then we thought, okay, done. You know what? People are housed now. They're going to be happy. It's all going to work out. So 2-3 months into it, oh my gosh, Christine, it was cuckoo. Because you had people who had moved in straight off of Skid Row, where you had, just driven by a couple of weeks ago or months ago, and they weren't used to living indoors. They weren't used to living in communities, etc. So we realized that housing was just the first part of the solution. So we brought in peer support in the form of peer advocates. So we actually hired a woman named Rachel, who is a goddess. And she is a peer in that she has lived experience. So she used to be homeless. She's suffered through addiction, all the ills that people on the street suffer through. And she also is trained to help connect people to services, etc. So I know you talk to a lot of co-living organizations, and they're bringing all sorts of benefits and entertainment and things, and training to their communities. Well, we're bringing tools to help people work through their mental health issues, through their substance abuse issues, and frankly, just the trauma of being homeless for so many years. So once we implemented this peer advocacy layer, so now we have housing and we have peer support, then this magical thing started happening. And I know you're familiar with this idea, is community started developing. So 6 months into this grand experiment, we had 28 people. It was no longer cuckoo, it was actually beautiful. So people are cooking together, they're gardening together, they're giving each other tips on where to go within the county and the city to get advice on how to tap into services. They even started setting up their own 12-step meetings within our first home. So we thought, okay, this is going well. So we bought another building, a big duplex this time, and each side of the duplex has 5 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms. So we could, manage to house a lot of people. And then we bought a third. So now we have capacity for 63 people. We've been operating for 1.5 years. We have great success. In fact, I recently just sort of looked at all of the residents who've moved through our system, and we've got an 82% success rate. And that means that people are still housed, and one other positive life aspect. So maybe their mental health has improved, maybe they've gotten a job, maybe they've reunited with family, something else. But here's a super efficient, I can't tell you how cheap it is compared to the solutions that the city and state are looking at. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's effective. So 83% of our residents are thriving, which means that 17% didn't, but within the homelessness space, that's really good. And it's immediate, because we can get these buildings, stand them up, furnish them, and get people off the streets within weeks.
I love that, Heidi. And it's like so it's like one individual. And I think that's the thing I respect most about you. It's like, instead of complaining about the problem and the sadness of the 59,000 people in LA, you're like, you know what? Let's work on this. And even, a single individual now housing 63 humans is like super impressive, right? But how do you, and I'm sure you've talked to the city, how do you scale that? What's the feedback? I'm a big Eric Garcetti fan, so I don't know if you've gotten to talk to him yet. Have you? Okay.
Yeah, he's actually come out to visit the homes.
Good.
And I think Eric was actually probably one of the best visits of politicians and bureaucrats. So I'm with you. I'm also a big fan of his, but I feel for him because the system really stymies him. There's a system in place in Los Angeles, in the county and the city. It's run by LAHSA and the United Way and some other big players. And it's a very slow-moving bureaucratic system with good intentions, no doubt. But, is lumbering through this, as you can see on the streets. 59,000 people on the streets actually increased since that last count, and they're not keeping pace. So they're incredibly dogmatic, and they're thinking about the housing first philosophy, which is wonderful, but it's really hard to scale it quickly. And we need triage right now. Co-living for homeless people, it may not be the solution for all 59,000, but I'd be willing to bet that a good 30% of the people could benefit from it, and we can do it immediately.
It has to be more than 30% of that. I think you're being modest. That's a massive 82% success rate on just the ones you've ran through the program. You guys only started 2 years ago. It's super impressive. Yeah. I'm sure, have you already watched the TED Talk? I'm sure you have. The Johann Hari one, where he talks about the opposite of addiction being connection.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we see. Because the thing that's happening and how this relates to your work and co-living is that, you have 69,000, whatever the number is going to be this year, people living on the streets. And people will tell you that there are 69,000 reasons why they're on the streets. And I agree with that. Every individual has a different reason for getting off the tracks. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they lack the support to deal with the trauma that made them homeless in the first place. Because if you were on the streets, maybe your mom and dad would help you, or your friends would, or somebody. But these people don't have that support for whatever reason. So what Haaven provides to them is the support to work through the trauma that made them homeless in the first place. And that support comes through their peers. It comes through people who they're living with, who are helping them get their lives back on track. And to that end, within Haaven, we have very, very simple rules. So the first thing is no violence in words or action. And I mean, that's sort of a no-brainer. I mean, you can't live with other people and be violent. And we've had a couple of people like chase each other around with brooms and stuff like that. And that is, for us, it's a deal breaker. You need to move. So we don't put people back on the streets. Rather, we move them to a different home. Because right now we're operating 8 different homes. So we have the flexibility to say, okay, you should probably move into this environment. And we've even had to move people 3 and 4 times. And guess what? By the 3rd or 4th time, they sort of get it. They're like, okay, I get it. I'm having the same problem no matter where I go. So maybe it's me. And they don't want to move anymore. So maybe that's what it takes, some tough love to sort of get them into a treatment or a program. But the other thing that's really magical is that if you have a group of, say, 6 people living in one home, they all experience mental health issues. They all experience addiction issues, because that's the common denominator among homelessness. And they help each other. And they do it in a really non-authoritative way, which they're more receptive to, and they do it in a really supportive way. So to that end, the second rule in our homes is no drinking or drugs on the properties. Now, if you're using, you're still welcome to live in Haaven, but we try and create what we call a culture of recovery within the homes, so that at least it's healthy when you're home. And at least you can escape some of the demons from the streets when you're at home in Haaven. And then, the thing is so many people are looking for that, because they get that peer support and the help. Because, maybe one housemate will have been sober for 6 months and has some tips and tricks to share with the person who's only been sober for 2 months. And somebody else will say, oh, you know what, I've had a really great mental health experience with, this organization, or, go check out Dee Dee Hirsch, because they've got a program that does this. And then our peer advocates, our trained peer advocates, are actively helping people connect to different social service organizations that can help them recover from life on the streets. So it's this community. Like, I don't think that this co-living with formerly homeless people would work without this layer of peer advocacy, because it helps keep everything on track. And I don't know how other co-living organizations work, but I suspect we're somewhat similar in that we hold house meetings. We actually have tips and tricks on how to get along with other people. We even published a little book, a little tiny booklet that everybody gets.
Cute.
Like ways to engage people, or if people are feeling crabby, ways to avoid them and stuff. So we're giving tools, tips, and tricks on learning how to live with each other, but then they're supporting each other and they become a family that help each other. So now they have support.
I love that. And it's so funny, because as you're talking, it mirrors almost, the co-living community I'm in with all entrepreneurs. It's, like we do experience shares, meaning like, okay, is it okay, instead of like forcing advice on somebody else, business advice, hey, is it okay if I do an experience share? Or are you open to any, feedback? They ask permission first, and then they say, in my previous experience with my company, that happened, I did this. Not like, no, you need to do this, you need to do it now. I think, again, with people that, like you said, mental health, they're trying sobriety, they're trying to get off drugs, like how, you're putting people together, like-minded, people that have been through the same, similar life experiences. And I think they could bond so much deeper because they have that common thread.
Right. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, oftentimes we say that, we're so peer-based that we've taken a community that lives on the streets and has certain interests, and that's a peer community. And, people just move into our peer community, which is different. So our peer community is about recovery and about getting stronger and getting your life back on track. And so, the peer influence, as we know, we've all been in school, we've all been in junior high school, those horrid years where peer influence was everything. And it's just a different type of peer influence, and it really helps prop people up and helps them achieve more in life. So I assume that's the way it works in co-living, groups throughout the world. The only difference with us is we just have a different population.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And there's co-living for musicians and entertainers and entrepreneurs, and there's so many, and that's what's exciting. Again, I feel like humans are getting back into that tribe mentality of like, let me find my tribe, whatever kind of tribe that is. And even, because I was watching this documentary on the homeless in Las Vegas, that they have this sewage system. They're all living underground, and you've probably seen it. It gave me chills because they were interviewing one of the guys, and he's been there for a couple of years under there. And he goes, no, I don't want to leave because all my friends are here. And it
Right.
gave me chills because, again, he had community, even if it was, down there, not in a house. What if he took those people, put them in a real home with, furnishings? And let's talk about that, because even I was mistaken in the beginning, when I had heard about your concept. I thought it was like a non-for-profit organization that you put together, but it's not, right?
Well, we don't profit, but
yeah.
we're not. Yeah, but we're not necessarily charity. The way we started this was, as I said, since we had some small investment properties, we sort of understood the small apartment management aspect. So the rent that our tenants, our housemates, pay to us cover the costs of running the house. So we provide, it's fully furnished, it's got cable, it's got internet, it's got, we provide all of the basics, washing machines, soap, toilet paper, paper towels, everything. So it's fully furnished. As I said, Airbnb, you can move right in. It's got everything but food, but our peer advocate will hook you up with resources for food. So we have good relationships with some local food banks, et cetera. And so that's a cost. It's a cost to run that. Now, people pay low rent. The rent that they pay is either through a program, rapid rehousing or some other government program, or through their Social Security payments. So most people are eligible for Social Security or disability at about $1,000 a month. So we just keep our rents low in a shared environment so that the money coming in can help cover the money going out. So break even is our goal. So are we nonprofit? Yeah, we're nonprofit.
And you're not making profit.
So far, we've been nonprofit, but we're not losing money, and I think that's the important thing. Is there a model that could become more profitable? Potentially, but we're not supported through any government organizations right now. We would like to be, and it would be fantastic if we could. And if we could get some support from the system, then what we would do is we would actually lower our rents even further.
Nice. And then would you expand even quicker?
Absolutely. And in fact, we actually have some pretty large expansion plans right now, and I feel very confident about it over the next year or two. In the process of us doing this, my husband and I did this as a mom and pop with Rachel, our peer advocate. So the three of us, and I always add my son in there too, because while he's 14, he is our chief technology officer. And, there's technology places. But plus he's part of the, heart and spirit of this organization. And we even have a building named after him. Shadray.
Oh, nice.
His name is Andreas.
That's awesome.
We also have one Casa John named after my husband John, and I'm hoping to do House of Ho for Heidi Ho, but
nice.
We'll see. I'm not sure how that's going to apply.
That's awesome.
But at any rate, in the process of doing this, sort of the first year, we had to figure out what we were doing, and it was hard. And I tell you, it was the hardest year of our lives. I mean, advertising didn't have anything on helping to stand up this organization. But once we figured out that we had a really good thing going and we sort of streamlined our processes and really got our peer advocacy going well, doing that, while I was unable to attract government support, who is a little bit afraid to try something new, shall we say, we were able to attract a whole lot of people from the private sector. So we have a guy named Ron Miller, who is this entrepreneur's entrepreneur, who is helping us expand right now. He brought in the UCLA MBA school of economists who help us build a financial model. And then Jeremiah, who runs Upstart, he's helping us think about it now. We've even got a pastor from the Tree of Life Baptist Church down in Watts that's helping us now. And a doctor who used to run a psychiatric hospital, the Del Amo Psychiatric Hospital. So we've amassed this team of people who are as passionate about Haaven as we are. And so we're all putting our nose to the grindstone right now and figuring out how to expand. So we believe that within 1 year, we will have 500 beds. And within 5 years, we will have 5,000 beds. And the way we do that is we have this killer lease deal. So we don't need to buy these houses anymore, these newly constructed duplexes. There's an organization, a developer called Ocean Properties, and the owner, Kip, has cut a great deal with us. So we can long-term lease these buildings, and we can lease up to 10 of them a month. So 10 times 20 people, I mean, that's 200 people a month that we could be housing.
That is incredible.
It's pretty great, isn't it? So then the second part of that is We've got a bunch of private investors, people who have raised their hands and said, I'd like to help. And it costs us to set up each home. So we're raising the money, $50,000 to $75,000 per duplex, which is 20 people, to help outfit the homes, furnish it, get it set up, get all the utilities on, etc. And that's a 5-year loan that we can pay back over 5 years with 2 to 3% interest. So we've got like a way to continue doing this and expanding using only private funds. And nobody has to really donate. They can just invest in the organization.
Oh, cool. That's even that. Okay. That was my next question. So that's why you're keeping it. That's so much smarter to keep it private in that sense, right? Because then it's just, and you never know who's listening to the show for sure. And
our email.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, please, let's do an interview because I've been trying to explain your concept to people and the magic you guys are doing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to interview her so they could just send the link and they could see your passion and your drive for problem solving. And again, I'm the same. I'm always like, I don't want to complain about something. I want to find the solution. And I love to think of the future, like how could this pan out? Co-living is expanding rapidly. Like you already know that. Everybody knows that on a global level. How cool would it be for some of these concepts? I know they're just starting out, but if they're rapidly expanding, they're profitable, what better give back to the community than, okay, this is what we're doing. We're donating a portion of our, of our revenue to Haaven, and we've housed this many people this year, homeless people. That's like a no-brainer to me, right?
Yeah. It seems like a no-brainer. And actually, Jeremiah from Upstart, he brought some of the residents, the Upstart, the Hollywood-based co-living.
Yeah. Yeah, they have 400 residents already, so
yeah, I know.
Which is awesome.
And they're artists and aspiring musicians and actors, etc. So some of their residents came down to one of our houses and they did a jam session one night. And I think the thing that we all sort of discovered is that we're all the same. It's just we're dealing with different stuff and we've got different challenges and different peer groups. But it was pretty neat to sort of see the two cultures come together and realize that we had so much more in common than not. It was nice.
I love that. We're all human, right? If you just take it to the very bare basic, everybody's human, okay? And they want that connection and that community. I love hearing that. So let's talk a little bit, let's go deeper too on the residents and just maybe some success stories. I know, so like each room, so you have, and that's how you keep the cost down too, is you have 2 residents per room. So does that actually build even tighter bonds as far as becoming like family?
Yeah, it does. And actually, it's a lifesaver for a lot of our residents because we have people that are coming in off of Skid Row, they're coming in off of Venice Beach, people who have been in the streets for literally years. And in fact, we've got one guy who was living up in the hills of Malibu and got burned out the recent fires. So he's moved into one of our homes and he is having such a struggle even sleeping indoors that, for the first couple of weeks, he was still pitching his tent in the backyard, and then, slowly but surely, then he brought his tent into the bedroom and now he's tent free. I'm happy to report. So he actually sleeps in a bed, he takes showers and everything. So that's a great thing. But, for a lot of the people, and I don't want to use names or anything to protect people's privacies, but thinking about one woman who was held on a 5150 last year, which means that she's a danger to herself or others. So the police take her because she was suicidal. And intense addiction issues, intense mental health issues. And she moved in with us. She's lived with us for a year. She moved into a shared room and she had to live in that shared room because she had to have this relationship with another person and accountability. And also, when you're in that shared room, a lot of people who used to live on the streets are suffering through, post-trauma, hole up. And that's why that single room occupancy idea for formerly homeless people is so incredibly sad. Because they're dealing with depression and awful feelings. They're the last place they need to be is alone. And so people often start out in a shared bedroom, and so they have a built-in relationship and accountability to their roommate. Also, because in a shared bedroom, it gets them out of their rooms and downstairs and into the area where they can socialize with other people. And then, perhaps like in this person's case, 6 months later, she's feeling a lot better. She's volunteering with the ASPCA now. She's doing some different things. And now she's ready to be in a single room. So she always says that I graduated to a single room. So now she's living in a single room because, she's social now and she's sort of overcome a lot of the stuff. But especially when you're early in giving up drug addiction, especially heroin and meth, it's really beneficial for people to be in a shared room so that they can help stay strong through the urges. And a couple of times when we have had people who've, reverted back to using and they've overdosed or something, it has been when they've been in a single room. So we've really learned our lesson that it's very helpful to have people living together and sleeping in the same room, just for support.
And then is this bridge, do you consider this bridge housing at all? Is it kind of like, okay, or have people been there the whole time?
You know what, because we're outside of the system's defined.
Make your own rules.
I'm bridge housing or I'm permanent supportive housing. And I can't tell you how frustrated I am with that, because housing is housing. Yeah. And, for us, we don't fit in anywhere. And thank God we don't, because we're quick and we're nimble and we're now. And we have people who will live there for their entire lives. And we have people who, will stay there for a month while they're waiting for their Section 8 vouchers to arrive or waiting to find a place. Each one of our 8 homes has a very different character. Like, we have one home that we sort of call the Golden Girls, and it's all little old ladies. A couple of them are physically disabled, so the other ones who are more able, they help with more chores, and they're going to be there for the rest of their lives. And in fact, actually, one of them did die of natural causes last year, but thank God she died with her friends in a bed rather than on the streets. And then we have other homes where people will be there maybe for a couple of months, and then they'll move on to something else. And it's sort of interesting because I find that each community becomes very contagious. And we have one home at Weller House, our very first home, and almost all of the guys who live in this place are now going to school, so it's like they see each other. Like, one guy has success going to a community college, so the other guy says, hey, maybe I'll go try that too. And now one of the residents completed the coursework at Santa Monica City College, and he's now going to Pepperdine.
That is incredible. No, and it's like a positive peer pressure, right? That happens in our house too. People start waking up earlier, going to the gym, then everybody else has to go to the gym. There's something to be said about that.
Right. Ours, the gym would be awesome. We actually have our houses, they get up early and they go to NA meetings or AA meetings.
Okay. Well, still they're getting up early. That is awesome. I love that. And so, like, Heidi, let's talk about collaborative, because I saw this, kind of in my research and before talking to you, collaborative housing. Like, I see you use that term, or is it co-living, or is it like, what type, how would you describe it?
You know what, we're struggling with this, as I know the whole industry is struggling. Collaborative, we sort of picked up because it was terminology that had been used in Los Angeles earlier. And I was struck by it because I see people collaborating together and doing chores together and figuring out how to support each other. But I'm not sure if it really defines what this living environment is. We've talked about peer living or co-living or shared living. And while I think we probably do need to make a determination and describe ourselves something that is really explicit, frankly, we've just been focused on other things, so we've sort of stopped with collaborative living. I don't mind it, but I would really love for us all to have a common descriptive and just really easy to understand name that people can understand quickly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And are there any concepts here in the States that are similar? Is there anybody doing something similar?
Yeah, there are. And actually, we were inspired by an organization in Los Angeles that, helps bring peer advocacy into homes that are privately owned, where people take in formerly homeless people. So, we were inspired by other people who have done this. My aunt lives in a community on the East Coast where she lives in a multi-generational community and they share chores. So, this idea of communal living, I think, has been around. Actually, we're the ones who sort of messed it up and decided that, one family per home is going to be the way to go. But people around the world live in communal societies and, find support with one another. So I certainly would never take the credit for developing this idea. I think we just figured out a way to deploy it in a super quick way, in a super efficient way, and a way that's super effective for our particular population.
No, and I searched for it. I don't know if it's still online. You guys had broken down, like, okay, here's how many residents we've had through all the homes. Is that still public? And then it says how many have left because of violence or mental illness, or right?
Oh, I just took that down, but maybe I'll put it back up. Our
Okay.
website is horrible. And actually the team that is helping us right now, because it was just a deck that I did, and so I'm very limited in my skills. But we will have a good website going up shortly. We had to figure out who we were though first, and what our business model was going to be. You remember, Christine, I spent a whole year trying to convince government that this was a viable solution. And I finally had to give up on that folly, because government does not shift, and government does not embrace disruption. Government likes
That's like an oxymoron. You're right. There's no disruption with the government.
Yeah. Well, there may be a little disruption going on, but that's, never mind. I'm not going to get
That's another podcast episode.
Yeah, exactly. But for, city and county government to try and embrace this new idea, they have issues with us. They quote unquote, and get this, wait for it, people. They think that it is not good for people to be living together.
Oh my gosh.
Right. They define a housing solution as one person per home. So, we've heard that from everybody within government that, well, maybe if you guys brought it down to just one person per room, or if you brought less people into the organization, but, they have not been embracing the idea of shared living.
Well, what is there? Because that creates density. So you're using less square footage, putting more people, they're getting along, you're not wasting space.
That's right.
So what's their argument? Why do they not like the idea of
apparently it goes back to some HUD rule, so a federal HUD rule that defines housing. So if you're going to house a person and click off that box, it needs to be one person per domicile. So it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not going to make sense to any of your viewers, but that's been my battle for a year now, is according to the rules within the homeless services industry, one person in a home is considered housed. So we're not considered housing.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's I love your tagline is rebel with a cause. You're such you're just, you go for it. And I love that. And so you're exactly right. You're better off that there's no these hard set rules. You guys are able to navigate around all of this,
right.
Still, which is amazing.
Which is hard to do financially. I would give anything to get some help from government to help support our housemates, because that would make it work. And we don't even need help with the housing portion of it. I would love it if government could help cover the costs of the salaries of our peer advocates. Their Department of Mental Health trained advocates. That would be phenomenal. But that's just not going to be in the cards for us right now, but maybe in the future it will be.
For sure. And then how do you guys find the residents? Is it word of mouth or?
People used to refer us through the system, but now, since the system doesn't love collaborative housing as a solution, they're no longer referring people to us through the coordinated entry system in Los Angeles. But what we're doing is we're getting the word out there, because while the system isn't the hugest fan of collaborative housing, the people who work within the system love it to pieces. So the case managers who've worked with us just love it. And so they refer people into us. So anybody they find who has resources on their own, they send them to us. So if it's Social Security or something, they refer them to us like crazy. So we're full. We always have a room or two. We're confident that we're going to be able to fill even more buildings in the near future. In fact, we're doing 2 buildings in conjunction with a church in Watts, which is going to be great. So those will open in the spring. And then we also have a pilot program that hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be working on with Mayor Garcetti and his team to house people who are coming out of prison. So a lot of people get released from prison, and many of those people end up being homeless because they don't have any place to go. So we'll be housing fellows, as their term, so former felons who will come in and help them get back on their feet and help restart their lives in a shared community culture of recovery to help them get their life on track from the get-go. So I'm very hopeful that will start in February.
That's amazing. And what are some good partners with you guys? Obviously churches, do you guys possible corporate partners? Is there any other organizations that would partner?
Yeah, that's the next step. I'm going to start working on that very soon. And now that we've got this expanded team, we actually have our very first big board of advisors meeting coming up on the 18th. So I assume that come January, we're going to hit the road and we're going to have some great ideas. And I think we're going to bring in some support. I don't have that right now, but I know it's in the works.
Yes. Yay. Awesome. No. And again, I love saying, I love asking these questions because again, somebody might be listening like, oh my gosh, like I can help, or, oh, we work for a huge corporation and we're looking for a way to give back. So I just always love to hear people's dream list of potential partnerships. Yeah, that's very helpful. And then also like fundraising, like, do you guys have a way of fundraising currently?
We have not done any fundraising yet, but we do have people who are ready to donate funds, if that makes sense.
Okay. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with some fundraisers and, spent some time with them over the past year, and traditional fundraising and the, throwing events and having galas and things like that, that's not in our DNA, and we're just not going to be that kind of an organization. So we're going to be a little more direct. So we have, our fundraising is more direct in that we're just going to people and saying, hey, if you want to help get 20 people off the streets, here's what it takes to loan us the money to bridge until we can pay you back over the first 5 years. So I don't want to necessarily be charity as much as I want to be a group of private citizens helping to solve a very public problem. And so the money part of this, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I just don't envision us ever throwing a party and then, raising a couple of dollars and having people raise paddles and stuff. I just want it to be a little more straightforward.
I appreciate that. I feel you. I'm the same exact way. So out of curiosity, with that said, how much is it to house one single person annually? Roughly?
Well, it's they pay rent, so they're paying anywhere from $600 to $800 a month in rent. So that rent covers the cost of the property. So for a property management perspective, the rent provided we're at capacity or 90% capacity, covers all of the expenses of the house. So the only outstanding expenses that we have that we need to raise funds for are the peer advocate salaries. So the person that is helping maintain the health of the home and the health of the individuals, and then the money that it takes to set up these homes, so to furnish them, etc. So that's, as I said before, we're going to have a loan program. It's called Adopt a House, where you can loan Haaven the money to be able to set up these homes, and then we can pay that back with interest over 5 years. And then to cover the peer advocate salary, currently rent is covering that, but that means that our rent has to be a little higher to cover the cost of that peer advocate. Ideally, we would be running the homes privately and government would be supporting the peer advocate salaries. And then we could be able to afford to bring our rent back down to about $500, $550 a month, which would be ideal for us.
For sure. No,
right,
that makes sense.
Up a little bit higher, which, believe me, there are plenty of people that still need it. But our vision was we want the people directly off of Skid Row. We want the people that nobody else can house, and we want the people that have nothing. And so to do that, we need to get help covering some of the salaries.
Definitely. And so do you know the growth rate? Again, I know the number's changing daily, so it's impossible to know the exact number. Like, what is it annually increasing by in just Los Angeles County? We're not even talking about San Francisco.
Yeah. Oh, homelessness?
Yeah.
15% is increasing. And the thing is that, with the Prop HHH and H, they raise billions of dollars, and still there are housing being built in the pipeline, but still nothing's opened. And my fear is, especially coming from my background in marketing, is I'm seeing consumer attitudes really shift. Like a couple of years ago when we first started talking about this and we first started housing people were very empathetic toward it and they really wanted to help. But now that homelessness is, people are seeing it grow and grow and grow, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and they're not seeing any action. And I think people are losing their empathy. They're losing their trust in government to be able to solve the problem because they're seeing that nothing is happening, no change is happening. And then, frankly, it's hard to love the poor homeless person who just, broke into your garage and stole your stuff, So people lose the empathy, and that's what my biggest fear is right now, is that people won't care anymore. And, so for us, I see we've really got to focus on a solution and sharing how people's lives have transformed and introducing people who have gone, through the Haaven process, if you will, change their lives so people can understand that they can be part of something really positive. Because when they drive down the streets and they look under the underpasses, etc., I think people are just shamed by it. but they don't feel like they want to reach out and help because they feel powerless.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. And, on the intro before this interview, I shared the story, living in Europe, in Amsterdam, they don't have homeless. And the Uber driver, he laughed. He's just like, no, we put them in houses. And anytime I'm in Europe, they're always like, what are you guys doing over there? Like, you're the most wealthiest country, and like, what is going on? And it's embarrassing, and even coming back, you're exactly right. Because I lived in Playa Vista next to Venice. And, it was even more and more tense under the freeway underpasses than when I was gone for 5 months. I saw how much it changed just in 5 months this year.
Right. Yeah. The solutions are not keeping pace with the problem. And, it's just not happening. And the way that the system, systems are systems for a reason. They're big, huge, bloated, bureaucratic systems. They aren't nimble and they can't solve this problem right now, clearly. So I think politicians are eventually going to have to start looking at some of these new ideas and these nimble ideas if they're going to survive. And so we're just going to wait it out, and we're going to keep on housing people, and we're going to keep on having examples of people who are thriving and, living and, loving and Haven homes. And hopefully someday somebody will maybe put away the system manual and say, we need to try something new.
I love it. Well, I am rooting for you. I am on board. I feel like it's going to be the snowball effect where it's starting. And again, you've done a ton in 2 years. So impressive. But like the snowball effect where the word gets out. And again, the success stories get shared. And you're like, wow, like we can make a difference. If we just focus on one person at a time and not get overwhelmed of 60,000 people, but just a person at a time, that could just snowball.
Right. And, the other thing is I was talking to a group of high schoolers recently about Haven, and it just struck me. I don't know if you've heard this term about bullying. If you see something, say something. So together we came up with the idea of, if you see something, say something, but then do something. And it's so easy to just do something. And, I spent years bitching about homelessness. And, so I had a long history of throwing rocks at government and all sorts of stuff because I was so furious that nothing was changing. And rather than resign myself to just, watching the same people languish on the streets day after day, we just decided to do something. When we first launched, we didn't have the perfect solution, but we refined it over the course of the year. And now 2 years into it, it's working really well. And as I said at the outset, it's an efficient, effective, and immediate solution to homelessness. And it's here now. It's available now. We can do this for $5,000 a head. And, for $5,000 a person, we can get them off the streets, plus their nominal rent. We can get them off the streets, and we can get them in healthy environments, and we can get them back to being contributing members of society. And, that feels good. And, it feels good at the end of the day for us. And, I hope that it feels good for people who are watching the show and maybe they want to help.
Yes. Heidi, with an 82% success rate, of course, people should be willing to help. And again, it's the holiday season, and it's so crazy we timed it that way. Because I remember sitting with you at dinner. That was back in August.
Yeah, it was.
So yes. So if anybody wants listening, we're obviously going to have Haven's information. You could take a look at just their success. On your website, I know you think it's not a pretty website, but it is so informative. Like all your stats, all the success, just you broke all the questions I had were all those answers were listed. And I was just blown away. And so you guys are doing amazing work. What's the future? I'll end with that. What's the near future for Haven? 5 years out, where do you see Haven?
I think Haven is going to do two things. First of all, it's going to stand for a bigger idea, which is if you see something, say something, do something. And so I would love for people to sort of catch that and feel like they too can do something. Sometimes the answer is really simple. Sometimes it's not that complicated. And, as my family thought about this around this very dinner table for so many years, the answer to homelessness is housing, supportive housing. You just do it. And the other, so I hope it's that Haven stands for just getting out and doing something. But then the other thing is within Los Angeles, I hope that we have 5,000 beds. I really do. That's a goal of ours. I know that our chairman of the board, Ron Miller, is, trying like heck to figure out how to get us there. And I trust his business savvy to get us there. So I hope we have 5,000 beds, but then In addition, I hope that we've expanded beyond Los Angeles. And I don't think it needs to be us running it. I mean, I'll give the book to anybody who wants to try this on their own. I mean, we've created the process now. I know you're working on software for co-living, which we should probably look at, by the way. But we have the book on how to start this. I mean, I have a step-by-step guide on how to open one of these homes. I mean, how many spoons you need, how many pillows you need, everything. And it's down to 4 vendors. You can stand up a home on your own and do this. So I'm hopeful that other people around the country will do this as well. And for what it's worth, we have had a couple of states who are contacting us, and we are starting some early collaborative work with them. So I do believe that there will be Havens or Haven-like organizations around the country as well.
I love that. So, okay, let me ask you one last question. What's your dream list of like much needed volunteers right now? Like, are there roles that you're like, gosh, if somebody could volunteer and help us with this stuff, just laundry list it.
Yeah. You know, the stuff that matters, like we have vegetable gardens in all of our homes, and we have exercise rooms in all of our homes. So we have like treadmills and weights and stuff like that. And so what we need are people who are willing to come out and work with people on the fundamental skills to re-engage in life. So whether it's doing your hair or helping plant a vegetable garden. It's just the simple things of life. Or, here are some yoga classes or meditation classes or anything that you can think of to help people have a better life experience is what we need. Does that make sense? I know that's make sense.
Yeah, no. And that's for locals. So people that are in Los Angeles, they could come to one of the homes, they could put on an event, they can come help, teach. Okay, cool. Yes. And is there any virtual help you guys need? Like
virtual help, that might be really interesting. I haven't thought about that a lot, but maybe resume building would be really great.
Cool. Like helping build their resumes. Yeah.
Right. And also filling out grant forms, because navigating the system is so hard, you can't believe it. And so for people who are trying to access mental health grants or, trying to renew their disability and stuff, it's really hard for them to do. So if anybody has any aptitude with computers and also, working through a systemic challenge, that's what we need. Because oftentimes we end up doing it, and boy, I got to tell you, it is so hard. It's so hard to try and apply for your Social Security disability, when you've been declined or something. It's so incredibly difficult.
And even maybe somebody with a media or marketing background that could do success stories, right? Like spotlight, one of the residents and share their story and be able to blog about it and write about it. And again, I think you're right. I think then you shift the momentum in the opposite direction of like, oh my gosh, like we can make a difference. Not like, oh my God, the problem's getting worse. And again, that I think stuff like that could help.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot our most important need is our website. If anybody can help us design a better website, I'll take it. We'll switch to anything.
There you go. You heard it here on the show. If you're feeling giving and you love creating websites, haven.org with 2 A's, Haven with 2 A's. So that's a funny thing too. Me and Heidi were talking, we just had Haven Co-Living on, and they are in Venice Beach also. So hopefully there's not confusion on, the different clientele that comes to the doors. But have you guys, because of the other concept.
I have just heard of them recently. The reason we became Haven is 2 or 3 years ago when I was trying to secure a website, .org. Haven was taken, Haven, not by this Haven, but it was something I had to purchase from GoDaddy for like $1,000. And I was like, I don't have money and I don't want to do that. And my husband was trying to file the LLC paperwork. And he's like, I need the name now. I need it now. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do Haven with 2 A's, because I wrote it out and it looked sort of cool. And I was like, and since we buy everything from IKEA anyway, we'll go ahead and just sort of use the 2 vowels like IKEA does. And so it just sort of stuck. And then, I don't know, we've just called it Haven for so long with the 2 A's. We just sort of stuck with it. So then I found out about this other Haven in Venice. And, our housing isn't in Venice. We live in Venice. And I thought, abundance creates abundance. I mean, I'm not going to do a cease and desist or anything like that, because I think we were around before. But I figure, like, if people talk about Haven as co-living and there happens to be Haven for homeless people and Haven for other people, that's awesome. And if I were them, I might think like, uh-oh, maybe everybody's going to think for homeless housing. But
they have
like, what the heck?
Yeah, no. They have a health and wellness background. So I think you're right. I think rising tides lifts all boats, and you guys, I think it will push momentum forward in both their directions. But it was just funny because we just had them on a couple weeks ago. So yeah, hopefully there's not too much confusion.
I haven't met them, but I did when I was driving back home the other day. I saw some of their residents wearing Haaven t-shirts out picking trash up from the street, and I thought that was really great. And actually, it was something that I thought I might like to adopt for our homes as well. I mean, our residents and housemates, we don't have the NIMBY problems because the homes are really beautiful. And also the residents take great care of the homes, and we take great care to introduce each of the homes within the communities. So we often do like a potluck party with the whole neighborhood when we open a house or something, so that people can embrace the residents and understand that, you know, they're going to be seeing some people that, you know, may have some illness issues, and be tolerant of it and understand what this community is about. And so far, so good. We haven't had any issues. In fact, in terms of communities embracing Haaven homes, they love the vegetable gardens, and all of our homes, you know, during the summertime, they're growing tomatoes, and the next door neighbor has limes, and they do swaps over the fence. So far, so good.
I love that. Oh, that's so great. I love those stories. That's awesome. Well, Heidi, thank you again so much for coming on this week on the show. Really appreciate it. Definitely next time I'm in Los Angeles, we definitely need to get together. I would love to tour. I still haven't toured the home. So
yeah, please do anytime. And if people are interested, I often bring friends over, and, you know, people love to meet, you know, people who live in our homes love to meet other people. And so if anybody's interested in working with us, give me a call.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks again. Happy holidays.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. And keep in mind, we are on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes. And also, if you are a co-living community, you can reach out to us to be listed on the Kindred platform. That's KNDRD.io. It's a great way to showcase pictures, videos, virtual tours of your community. Also, we have a link in the show notes for our 3 books on co-living. You can also find one of them on Amazon.com if you'd like the print version. And lastly, a very quick shout out to our partners over at ISL Furnishings. They bring light to your vision and already work with some of the larger companies like Star City and Quarters. See you guys next week.